The storm pressed hard against the night, waves slamming against the jagged rocks as thunder echoed like a drumbeat of doom. Her cry, muffled and broken, rose from beneath the rolling surf, and at first it seemed like a trick of the wind. Thomas gripped the side of the boat, eyes wide as he shouted, "Did you hear that?" His voice cracked with disbelief. Anna leaned forward, her breath ragged, whispering, "It came from the water." Then the sound came again, more desperate, a hollow screech that twisted between the roar of waves. James steadied the lantern, its golden light slicing through the spray. His face turned pale as he gasped, "Something is trapped." The water boiled with foam, and in the flicker of lightning, they caught sight of a shape thrashing against a snare of steel wires. The sea whipped and pulled, each wave threatening to drag the creature down. Thomas shouted, "Hold on," though he knew the animal could not hear. The helpless struggle cut into him like a blade, and dread surged. The night was alive with chaos, but the sound of suffering pierced louder than the storm. The lantern shook with each gust, its glow slipping in and out of existence. Anna gasped, "It's drowning." Her words cracked under the weight of fear. Thomas growled through gritted teeth, "We cannot let it die out here." The storm fought them with every breath, and the sea seemed intent on claiming both the creature and themselves. James barked, the nets cutting deeper. His voice was sharp, frantic, slicing through the chaos. The boat pitched violently, water spilling over the edges and soaking their boots. The sound of the trapped ray's wings slapping the wires burned into their ears, a rhythm of despair that quickened their panic. Lightning struck again, lighting the twisted steel mesh that bound the creature. The sight seared into Thomas's memory, his gut twisting. The storm roared louder, but the sound of suffering drowned it all. The ray shuddered beneath the crushing weight of the storm, wings thrashing in agony as steel wires cut deeper into its skin. Anna whispered, "It's suffering," her voice trembling. Thomas spat into the wind, "We have to reach it now." James shook his head. "If the mast gives, we'll be dragged under." Their fear collided with urgency, each second carving away at hope. The sea hissed like a beast as waves struck harder, spraying cold salt into their eyes. The ray's eyes flickered above the surface, wide and glassy, its breath ragged and frantic. The sight tore through Thomas's chest like fire. The storm gave no pause, no mercy. Each heartbeat was a war against despair, each breath stolen by the sea's rage. The storm clawed at every inch of them, tearing at clothes, skin, and courage. James shouted, "We'll lose the boat." His voice cracked, brittle with fear. Thomas snapped back, "Then we'll lose ourselves if we leave it." Anna's heart pounded, torn between both men's truths. The lantern swung wildly, throwing fractured light across their faces. Beneath the waves, the ray slammed its body again, the sound echoing like a drumbeat of suffering. Lightning burst, painting the moment in a searing white glare. The world became chaos, but inside the chaos, there was clarity. They could not turn away, not now. The boat lurched, tipping dangerously close to capsizing. Anna screamed, "It can't breathe." Her words cut through the wind like broken glass. Thomas braced himself, chest heaving, "Then we give it breath." His eyes locked onto the trapped ray, his voice raw with determination. James' lantern flickered, the last fragile flame against the storm's fury. The snared creature shuddered, its movements growing weaker, slower, surrendering to the steel's merciless grip. Silence threatened to claim it. Thomas's heart hammered in his throat, each beat screaming one truth. If they failed now, the ocean would swallow both the creature and their hope forever. The storm eased into a heavy drizzle, the sea sighing like a beast exhausted from rage. Thomas knelt at the bow, chest heaving as his eyes locked on the ray's still twitching form. Anna whispered, "It's fading." Her voice quivered, carrying the ache of helplessness. James tightened his grip on the lantern, its glow barely piercing the fog that rolled in thick and low. "We're losing it," he muttered, his tone flat with despair. Thomas reached for the net, rain dripping from his fingers, memories clawing back of another rescue lost to time. He growled under his breath, "Not again." Anna placed her hand on his shoulder, trembling but firm. "We can still save it," she said, the words fragile but filled with hope. The silence between them was broken only by the shallow gasps of the trapped creature. The weight of failure pressed close, but beneath it, a fragile bond began to spark, a promise unspoken, born in the fight for survival. Thomas gritted his teeth, pulling at the snare with raw determination, the steel biting into his palms. Anna cried, "You'll hurt yourself." Her hands hovered, torn between stopping him and helping. His voice came ragged. "Pain means nothing if it breathes." James leaned forward, his face tense as he studied the knots in the net. "The wires are twisted deep. It's not just caught, it's strangled." The words landed heavy, slicing through the fragile calm. The ray shuddered weakly, a faint tremor that made Anna's heart twist. She whispered, "Don't give up on it." Thomas's jaw tightened, muscles trembling, but his eyes burned with refusal. Every fiber of him screamed against surrender, not just for the animal but for a past scar carved into his soul. Anna pressed her hand over her chest, unable to shake the sharp ache radiating from the creature's struggle. She whispered, "It doesn't deserve this." Her voice cracked, fragile and raw. Thomas paused, his grip loosening for a moment, his shoulders sagging under memories too heavy to carry. James' eyes softened, though his voice remained guarded. "No creature deserves to suffer like this." The drizzle thickened, dripping from their hair and lashes, each drop like a tick of time running out. Anna's gaze lingered on the ray's trembling body, the helpless fight reflected in her eyes. "If it dies," she whispered, "part of me dies too." The confession slipped from her lips like a prayer. Thomas met her eyes, silent, but something shifted. A spark of shared pain, of shared resolve, knitting them together in the storm's aftermath. Thomas's voice broke the silence, low and rough. "Years ago, I lost one just like this." His words hung heavy, swallowed by the rain. Anna's lips parted, shock mixing with sorrow. James muttered, "You never said." Thomas's eyes never left the ray, his voice sharp with guilt. "I thought I could reach it, but the sea took it before I even touched the net." Anna gripped his arm tightly, her tone fierce. "That isn't today." The sharpness of her voice pierced the fog of regret, pulling him back to the moment. The ray twitched weakly, its body shivering against the steel. Thomas whispered, "Not this time." His chest rose and fell like a man carrying a weight too long, finally ready to bear it for something more than himself. The drizzle slowed, the ocean's roar replaced by its steady breathing tide. The three of them knelt together at the bow, united not by chance but by purpose. Anna whispered, "We can't fail it." James lowered the lantern closer, the warm light settling like fragile hope against the gloom. Thomas's hands, torn and bleeding, rested on the steel net, his body trembling but steady. "We won't," he said, his words more vow than comfort. The ray twitched again, weaker now, its struggle fading but not gone. Anna leaned closer, her voice soft, "Stay with us." A silence settled, heavy but resolute, the kind that binds hearts to a shared fate. For the first time, they were no longer three individuals battling the storm. They were one force, one will, anchored by the fragile life they refused to let slip away. The drizzle thickened into relentless sheets once more, the sea unwilling to release its hold. Thomas pulled at the wires, his muscles trembling, but the net resisted like an enemy determined to win. Anna cried out, "It's cutting deeper." Her voice was laced with panic. James grunted, his lantern nearly snuffed by wind. "We need tools, not bare hands." The ray convulsed again, each movement weaker, yet still desperate. Thomas roared into the storm, "I won't stop." His voice cracked under fury and fear. Anna reached to steady him, her hands trembling as she whispered, "If you break, we lose it too." The truth hung between them, fragile and sharp. James muttered, "We've little time." His words were grim, each syllable weighing heavy as the thunder above. The sea grew wilder, mocking their efforts, testing their resolve with every lurch of the boat. The boat lurched violently, nearly throwing Anna into the sea. Thomas caught her arm, his voice raw. "Hold on." The storm howled back, a cruel reminder of their fragility. The ray writhed once, then sagged, its body trembling beneath the crushing net. Anna's lips trembled, it slipping away. Thomas's jaw locked tight, every muscle screaming resistance. James shouted over the wind, "The storm will tear us apart before we free it." His voice carried both truth and warning. Thomas's gaze hardened, his chest heaving. "Then let it tear me apart," he growled, each word soaked in rage and conviction. The waves surged higher, pounding against the bow with a roar that drowned reason. Anna clutched the railing, heart racing, torn between fear of loss and awe at Thomas's defiance. Anna pressed her forehead against the slick railing, whispering, "Please, hold on," though her words vanished in the storm. The ray's tail flicked weakly, its energy fading. Thomas slammed his fist into the steel, growling, "I will not lose another." James crouched beside him, inspecting the twisted knots, his voice tight. These wires weren't left by chance. Someone set this. His words stung with implication, a truth darker than the storm. Anna's head shot up, eyes wide with disbelief. "You mean, it was trapped?" The air grew heavier, their fight no longer just against sea and weather, but against human cruelty. Thomas snarled, "Then we cut it free, no matter what it takes." His voice thundered louder than the storm, igniting their will again. The storm clawed at their bodies, waves slamming hard against the bow. But it was the revelation that shook them more. Anna clutched Thomas's arm, whispering, "It's suffering because of them." Her tone wavered with both rage and sorrow. Thomas's jaw clenched, his voice breaking, "And I won't let their cruelty win." James hissed, "We'll drown if we keep fighting like this." His words struck with bitter practicality. Thomas spun to face him, shouting over the rain, "Better to drown fighting than to live watching it die." The thunder cracked above, sealing the moment in raw defiance. Anna's breath shuddered, torn between fear of loss and strength, born of compassion. The ray twitched again, as though answering their struggle, its fight tied to their will. The sea surged higher, battering the boat with crushing force, yet their resolve hardened. Thomas pulled until his muscles burned, veins taut, teeth gritted. Anna held fast, whispering prayers through chattering teeth. James shouted, "The mast is giving way." His words were raw, desperate. Thomas roared back, "Then let it break. But this net breaks first." His hands slipped, torn open by steel, blood mixing with seawater. Anna's breath hitched, tears falling unnoticed in the rain. The ray shuddered, its eyes flickering faintly above the surface, a fragile spark of life still clinging. Hope wavered like the lantern light, but it did not die. Their struggle became a vow, forged in the storm, bound by desperation and fire. The storm receded into a bitter drizzle, the sea whispering like it carried secrets. Thomas pressed his torn palms to the net, his breath ragged, when James leaned closer, studying the steel wires with narrowed eyes. "This isn't drift netting," he muttered, his tone low but sharp. Anna blinked, confusion flashing across her face. "What do you mean?" James tugged at the steel, his jaw tightening. "This was cut and twisted by hand. Someone made this trap." The words hung heavy, darker than the clouds above. Thomas's chest clenched as anger twisted with disbelief. "Deliberate?" His voice cracked, his throat raw. Anna's hand shook as she pressed her fingers to the slick metal. "Who would do this?" she whispered, her voice fragile as the drizzle. James's gaze hardened, his lantern glow sharpening his eyes. "Someone who didn't care if it lived or died." The truth wrapped around them like a noose, making the rescue more than survival. It became justice. Anna's voice trembled as she whispered, "It wasn't an accident." Her words were swallowed by the sea's sigh, yet the truth struck harder than thunder. Thomas's shoulders tensed, a shadow falling across his face. "This was cruelty," he growled, his words heavy as stone. James nodded slowly, his lips pressed thin, as though the truth weighed on him like lead. The ray twitched, struggling weakly against its bindings, every movement proof of its suffering. Anna gripped the railing, eyes burning with tears. "Someone set it up to die here," she said, her voice cracking, almost breaking. Thomas's fists clenched, blood dripping fresh from his torn palms. "Then they'll not win," he said fiercely, his tone a vow. The drizzle darkened the wood, the lantern glow fighting the gloom, as though the world itself leaned in to witness their fury. The rain eased, but silence carried more weight than thunder. Thomas's stayed locked on the trapped creature, his voice trembling. "I thought I was fighting the sea, but I'm fighting someone's cruelty." Anna's lips quivered, her heart aching as she whispered, "Why would anyone choose this?" James' jaw flexed as he studied the twisted steel. "For profit, for control, maybe fear." His tone was bitter, laced with disgust. The Ray's trembling body mirrored the frailty of truth itself, fragile, broken, but undeniable. Anna pressed her hands to the net, whispering softly, "Not this one. It will not be their victim." Thomas's head bowed, his breath shaky, then lifted with fire burning in his eyes. "We save it not just for it, but for everyone they've tried to destroy." The drizzle clung to them like a shroud, but within, a vow was carved into stone. James' voice cut through the drizzle, low and certain. "If someone said this, they may still be nearby." The words chilled Anna's veins. She glanced toward the shore, where jagged cliffs loomed dark and watching. Thomas growled, "Then let them watch. Let them see we fight." His tone was sharp, defiant. Anna's pulse quickened, unease crawling up her spine, but she nodded firmly. "We're not their executioners. We're its hope." The Ray twitched faintly, its struggle weaker, but not gone, as though clinging to their voices. James shook his head, his voice edged with warning. "If they come back, they won't thank us." Thomas spat, "I don't need their thanks." His eyes blazed with fury that even rain couldn't quench. Around them the storm lingered, but a new battle began, against cruelty itself. The silence between waves became suffocating, carrying whispers of unseen eyes. Anna's voice wavered. "It's more than a rescue now, isn't it?" Thomas's reply came hard. It always was. His eyes fixed on the trembling Ray, as if the creature embodied every scar in his soul. James sighed, the sound heavy, carrying the weight of truth. "Once we free it, others may suffer. But if we fail, its death is on us." Anna clenched her fists, fire lighting her soaked face. "Then we start here." Her voice cracked but held unshakable strength. Thomas's bloodied hands pressed again to the net. "Not one more will slip from me," he whispered, his vow lost in the sea spray. Above them, lightning split the sky once more, the heavens themselves bearing witness. The storm rose again, as though the sea itself tested their will. Waves slammed against the hull, rocking the boat until wood creaked under strain. Thomas roared, "Hold fast!" His hands tore at the net, veins bulging, blood smearing the steel. Anna clung to the railing, shouting over the wind, "You'll kill yourself," but her voice cracked with desperation, not doubt. James braced himself, lantern clutched close, shouting, "The mast won't hold much longer." Their breaths came ragged, time collapsing into heartbeats. The Ray thrashed faintly, weaker but alive, its body trembling against the cutting wires. Thomas' voice broke, a raw cry. "Breathe, damn you, breathe!" His roar wasn't just to the Ray, but to himself, to his ghosts, to the sea. Lightning exploded above, illuminating their fury and despair, and for a fleeting instant, hope burned in the storm's chaos. The sea roared louder, throwing water across their faces, but their fight did not break. Anna screamed, "Cut it, Thomas!" Her voice cracked like glass. He grunted, pulling with fury, "I won't stop until it's free." James shoved forward, lantern in one hand, the other gripping the wire, his voice strained. Together. Their hands tore at the metal, skin splitting under sharp edges, their blood mingling with salt water. The Ray twitched, its eyes flickering faint light like dying embers. Anna's tears mixed with the rain as she cried, "Stay with us!" Her voice shattered against thunder. Thomas's chest heaved as his voice thundered back. "This ends now." Every muscle screamed, the storm battering them harder, yet within their pain burned a single truth: surrender was death. The wires screeched under their force, snapping strands like brittle bones. Thomas roared, his voice cracking into the storm. "Break!" His palms shredded, dripping blood across the steel. Anna pressed against him, her face twisted with tears and fury. "Don't let go!" she screamed. James' teeth clenched as he growled, "Almost there." The storm hurled another wall of water across them, nearly tearing the lantern away, but they did not stop. The ray jerked violently, wings slapping the water, its fight rekindled by their fire. Thomas's eyes burned as he whispered, "We're not too late." His words were a plea and a vow. The final strands groaned, the steel shuddering, ready to yield. Their strength was spent, their bodies wrecked, but their will rose higher than the storm. The final wire snapped with a piercing crack, echoing like thunder itself. The net unraveled, steel recoiling violently into the sea. Thomas collapsed forward, chest heaving, hands shredded to bone-deep wounds. Anna gasped, pulling him back before he slipped into the water. "It's free!" she cried, her voice breaking with awe and relief. James stumbled against the mast, his lantern swinging wildly, but the light fell upon the ray as it floated, weak yet unbound. Its wings trembled, then stretched wide, shivering against the current. Thomas whispered hoarsely, "Breathe." His voice was ragged, almost gone. The ray lifted slightly, its movement fragile but defiant. Tears blurred Anna's eyes, her heart trembling in her chest. For a moment, even the storm seemed to pause, watching the fragile miracle unfold. The ray lifted its body, wings spreading wider with each trembling motion, fighting the storm with fragile strength. Anna's sobs broke free, her voice trembling. "It's alive." Her words were both prayer and miracle. Thomas stared, his bloodied hands shaking, whispering, "Not this time. Not again." His voice cracked with both grief and triumph. James' lantern light swayed, illuminating the ray as it slipped forward into the waves, slow but determined. The sea still raged, but within its chaos, hope shimmered. Thomas leaned against the railing, his body broken but his soul aflame. Anna clung to him, her tears washing with rain. James whispered softly, "We gave it back to the sea." His tone carried both relief and sorrow. The storm howled above, but for the first time, their hearts beat louder than its fury. The storm's rage softened into a steady drizzle, the sea calming as if exhaling after violence. Thomas slumped against the railing, his hands torn and raw, blood mingling with salt water. Anna knelt beside him, her face pale, whispering, "It lived." Her voice carried awe, trembling as though afraid the truth might vanish. James steadied the lantern, its glow flickering but steady, casting golden warmth against the gray mist. He said quietly, "We pulled it back from the grave." Thomas closed his eyes, breath ragged, but whispered, "Not again, I swore." His vow echoed in the quiet, heavy with memory and release. Anna placed her hand gently over his, her soaked fingers trembling. "You kept your promise," she said softly, her words a balm against his wounds. The sea rolled gently now, carrying the freed ray into its vast embrace, its shadow fading into the gray horizon. They sat together, broken but bound, their victory etched deeper than scars. The freed ray glided weakly through the water, wings stretching wider with each fragile stroke. Anna leaned over the edge, eyes following it, her voice cracking. "It's going home." Her tears blurred into rain, indistinguishable yet endless. Thomas watched with hollowed breath, his voice raw, "It's stronger than we thought." James' lantern swayed gently as the boat rocked with calmer tides. He muttered, "It deserves its chance." The words lingered like prayer, soft yet sacred. Anna pressed her hand to her chest, her body trembling. "We gave it back to life," she whispered, clinging to the fragile truth. Thomas's shoulders sagged, weight lifting like chains unbound, though pain lingered. "And life gave us back something too," he said, voice quiet but resolute. The drizzle softened, and the sea reflected pale light, as if blessing their sacrifice. The boat drifted in silence, carried gently by softened waves. Anna whispered, "I thought we would lose it. I thought we would lose us too." Her voice shook, raw with emotion. Thomas's gaze lifted toward the horizon, his chest rising and falling slowly. "We nearly did," he admitted, his voice weighted but calm. James set the lantern on the deck, the flame steady now, no longer threatened by wind. "But we didn't," he said firmly, his tone carrying quiet strength. Anna brushed her soaked hair from her face, a faint smile trembling through her grief. "We'll carry this forever," she murmured. Thomas nodded, his eyes softening. "Some scars are worth carrying." The sea shimmered faintly, as though nodding back, the horizon glowing with the first promise of dawn hidden behind clouds. The drizzle faded into mist, leaving the sea calm, broken only by the gentle rocking of the boat. Anna leaned against Thomas, her voice soft. "I've never felt so close to something, so fragile and strong." Thomas's eyes lingered on the horizon, his tone heavy with reflection. "It fought even when hope was gone." James leaned on the mast, lantern swaying gently, his voice steady. "That's survival. That's life." The silence between them was no longer heavy, but soothing, a balm after chaos. Thomas's torn hands ached, but he lifted one gently, brushing rain from his brow. "We'll heal," he whispered. Anna's hand tightened on his arm, her eyes shining. "And it will too." For the first time since the storm began, they smiled, not from relief but from shared resilience. The mist curled around them, soft as memory, wrapping the boat like a fragile cocoon. The sea shimmered faintly, reflecting light that broke through the clouds, pale but persistent. Thomas whispered, "It's gone to where it belongs." His words held both sorrow and peace. Anna watched the horizon, her voice trembling. "We let it breathe again. That's enough." James' lantern flickered one last time before he set it down, his shoulders lowering with relief. "We carried its weight," he said quietly, "and it carried ours." The truth resonated in their silence, each heart bound by the fragile thread of survival. Thomas's gaze softened, the memory of past loss no longer crushing but transformed. This time I kept my promise," he murmured. Anna pressed her head against his shoulder, her tears silent but warm. The sea rolled gently, the horizon stretching infinite, carrying their scars and their hope into eternity. The first light of dawn crept across the horizon, painting the sea in soft hues of silver and gold. Anna whispered, "It feels different now," her voice fragile, as though afraid to break the calm. Thomas's hands, bandaged in cloth torn from his shirt, rested against the railing, his eyes fixed on the endless horizon. "The sea took," he said quietly, "but it gave too." James' lantern finally burned out, smoke curling into the morning air. "It gave us the chance to fight," he said, his tone resolute. The silence stretched, filled with the hum of waves and the faint cry of distant seabirds. Anna's lips curved into a trembling smile, her tears finally drying. "And we didn't waste it." The moment hung suspended, fragile as glass, but unbreakable in memory. The sea reflected golden light, calm now, as if absolved of its cruelty. Thomas spoke softly, his voice tired but clear. "I carried a ghost into this storm, but I leave with something alive." Anna placed her hand gently on his, whispering, "And it leaves with us." Her words held truth beyond measure. James closed his eyes briefly, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion and release. "Not all endings break us," he said, his voice steady. The memory of the ray's wings flickering back to life burned behind their eyes, an image that would never fade. The silence wrapped them, no longer suffocating but sacred. The storm's violence had passed, leaving only echoes of survival, strength, and fragile redemption. Anna whispered, "I'll never forget the way it looked at us." Her words trembled like the sea's surface. Thomas nodded, his voice quiet. It knew, it trusted. James opened his eyes, his voice softer than the tide. And trust is rarer than survival. The dawn painted their faces in warm light, softening every scar and wound. Anna's breath caught as she realized the truth. They had not just saved the ray, they had saved themselves too. Thomas leaned back, his body broken but his spirit lifted. This was more than a rescue, he said, voice filled with quiet conviction. It was a promise to the living. The sea rolled gently, carrying their vow across the horizon. The sea stretched endless, a mirror of sky, fragile and infinite. Thomas whispered, "Its wings will carry further than we ever could." Anna's lips curved faintly, her tears finally gone. "And maybe that's enough," she said, her voice steady now. James straightened slowly, his body aching but his eyes clear. "What matters is that it lived because we didn't stop." Their silence carried power, their breath sensing with the tide. The storm was a memory now, but the scars it left bore weight, not of defeat, but of victory earned at a terrible price. The horizon burned brighter, a golden path carrying the promise of freedom and survival. The horizon shimmered as sunlight broke fully across the sea, gilding the waves in molten gold. Thomas's voice carried one final breath of truth. "The sea keeps its secrets, but today it kept its promise too." Anna closed her eyes, letting the warmth of morning touch her face, her voice a whisper. "And we carry it with us." James placed his hand on the mast, his voice low, steady. "What we did will outlast the storm." Their silence after was absolute, unbroken and whole. The boat rocked gently, carrying them homeward, but in their hearts they carried something greater. A life returned, a promise kept, a scar turned into light. The sea no longer raged. It sang.